Okay, this workshop is to help fearful and anxious children. We want to help move them from panic to trust in God, to be able to see that the adults around them are safe. You know, every child fears something. They may fear the dark. They may fear school, being left out, getting in trouble, failing, losing, being embarrassed. But every child has fears. And to fear is not automatically sin, is it? It's a part of living in a fallen world. Fear entered the world when Adam and Eve chose to sin, but it's a part of living in that fallen world. But unmanaged fear becomes paralyzing when anxiety begins to rule the heart. When I'm afraid, I put my trust in you, David said in Psalm 56. Notice that David didn't say, I never feel afraid. He said, when I am afraid. So the issue is not the presence of fear, but the issue is when the fear starts to drive us, to control the child. Anxiety feels uncontrollable, and it reveals what the heart believes it cannot live without. I must have blank in order to survive. And if I don't have it, I don't know how to live. I don't know what to do. I'm out of control. For God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of self-control, or controlled thinking, or sound mind thinking, according to 2 Timothy 1:7. I use this verse regularly in counseling, and I call it the 3 power tools. Where does our power come from? I don't have power in myself. You don't have power in yourself. Your child doesn't have power in themselves. But where do we get the power? The power comes from the Holy Spirit that indwells us. And when we understand that we have the power, we may not be plugged into the power. You can have an appliance that does nothing until it's plugged into the electrical outlet, right? There has to be a source of power. And we have the source of power. Sometimes we just feel disconnected, not plugged in. So fear controls us, paralyzes us, but power frees us to do what we need to do. And we have that power. That's the first power tool. The second one is love. And when I say love is a power tool, perfect love casts out fear, people are nodding. And then I say, how does it work? How does it do it? And it's like the deer in the headlights. They have no idea how perfect love casts out fear. And I get pat answers like, well, God is perfect. He'll cast out my fear. Well, how's that working for you? Is God casting out your fear? No, I'm still afraid. What does it mean to that perfect love, maturing love, growing love is going to cast out fear? Okay, what is the object of fear? Protecting me. I have to protect myself. What is the object of love? Loving the Lord God with your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength, everything within you. Vertical, going vertical, loving God. And love your neighbor as yourself, going horizontal. So fear makes me go inward, retreat, inward, isolate, withdraw. But love makes me go up and out. And my counselees have learned that when I look at them and go up and out, they know exactly what up and out means. It means you are going inward and it's paralyzing you. Go up and out and it will free you. And I help them to see that they can have the power tools to move from panic to trust. The third power tool is self-control, or controlled thinking, sound mind thinking. I am going to learn to think about myself in a biblical way. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I can't do it on my own, but I can do it through him. To think about myself, about my God. My God is awesome. My God loves me. My God says he'll never leave me or forsake me. My God can help me. So I'm thinking about God in a different way. And about my circumstances, to think about the circumstances as my God is bigger than my circumstances. Yes, my circumstance is scary. I'm afraid of it. I don't know what to do. But my God is bigger than my circumstance, and my God will help me to handle it because he's promised he will not give me more than I can handle. When I give, whether it's women or children, those power tools, it is so freeing. They feel like now I have a plan to overcome my anxiety. Okay, so we're talking about the plan here, aren't we? So what is the plan? The first P is to prepare. Prepare, listen, ask, and next steps. So how do we prepare ourselves to speak into the fear of a child? Well, the first thing that we have to do is really to prepare our own hearts. We're going to ask ourselves, am I minimizing this? Acting like it's not important, not a big deal. It is important to the child. The child feels unloved when we act like it's not important. Or am I irritated by it? That shows my inconvenience. I am inconvenienced by your fear. And that makes it about me, doesn't it? Instead of about me helping the child. Am I embarrassed by my child's anxiety? Isn't that my own fear of man? I'm afraid of what other mothers are going to think about me if I'm a bad mother and I have a fearful child. Or do I secretly bear the same fear or the same shame? I need to go to 1 Peter 5:7, where I understand I can cast all of my anxieties on him. Why? Because he cares for me. He cares for my child. And if I am not casting my cares on the Lord, how can I think I'm going to help my child or my counselee to carry their anxieties to the Lord? I'm going to be transmitting my own guilt or fear or shame or anger, whatever my negative emotion is, to my child. Children tend to borrow our emotional tone, don't they? They learn from our model, and our model needs to be a heart of love and love for God and trust in God. Okay? We prepare our own hearts, but we also need to prepare our understanding. We need to have our minds fixed on God and His Word. We need to know what fear is, what it looks like, what it feels like, and how to help a child through that. So the first thing we really want to be clear ourselves in our own understanding is that anxiety is an umbrella term. Anxiety is told in Scripture, be anxious for nothing. We see anxiety really as sin, but we don't want to make our child think, oh, you're sinning because you're afraid, because it is a normal human fear, and yet we're told not to fear. You know, it's interesting, we're not told to never be angry or to never be lonely. The other emotions, we are not told you can't do them. But fear is one that we are told, do not be afraid. So this is one that we have to help our child learn, that anxiety is not in God's wheelhouse. To my knowledge, Jesus never was fearful in his human existence. He was not fearful, but he did feel all the other emotions. We have examples of him being angry or feeling alone. My God, why have you forsaken me? Feeling sad, he grieved. The other emotions are there. I don't know of a single example that we can say Jesus felt afraid. Why? Because he trusted God so completely. He trusted his Father. And that's where we have to help our children get to the place that their anxiety turns to trust in God. And that's when we've really helped them. Okay, so if anxiety is the umbrella term, let's define fear. Fear is typically something that's happened in the past that you are dragging into the present, and you are so afraid it's going to ever happen again. You don't want it to ever happen again, and you are doing anything and everything to prevent it from happening again. Okay? I was afraid of spiders, and I thought either I or somebody had to kill every spider that happened in my presence anywhere. Even if it was a teeny weeny itsy bitsy one up in the corner of the room, my husband had to climb up on a chair and kill that spider for me if he loved me. Okay, that was an unreasonable, unrealistic fear that was related to a past belief that I had that a spider would hurt me, it would bite me, it would kill me. And I had to learn that that wasn't true. I eventually overcame my fear of spiders, and now a spider's a spider. I mean, I can live with them and even protect them if I need to, because they really do eat bad bugs. So I like to have spiders. Okay, fear relates to that past experience that we drag into the present tense, and it paralyzes us in the present tense. But worry relates to a future event that maybe, might, possibly could happen, and you are dragging it into the present tense and letting it paralyze you. We don't ever want to experience it, so we are going to do anything and everything, and we think wringing our hands is going to keep it from happening. And panic attacks tend to describe the physical manifestations of anxiety. When somebody comes to you with anxiety and talks about their palpitating heart, talks about the shortness of breath, talks about sometimes their paralyzing moments of, I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. Okay, that is the physical manifestations of anxiety. So understanding that anxiety is really the umbrella term. And if you don't know how you feel like in I'm not safe or not in control or I will be alone or I might fail or something bad is coming, imagine how a child is going to feel. They have less experience, less understanding, less sound mind thinking than you have. So we don't want our children to be caught up in fear or worry or being anxious about tomorrow, because anxiety lives in an imagined tomorrow, doesn't it? They've become a worry wart. Okay, so the third thing we want to prepare is our environment. We've prepared our heart, our understanding, and now our environment. We want to be a safe place to come, for the child to come to, whether we're the parent or whether we're the counselor or teacher. We want them to feel safe around us. So we don't address anxiety by shaming them, saying stop being dramatic, or only babies act that way, or what's wrong with you that you can't handle it. We don't want to dismiss it. It's not a big deal, because that makes the kids feel unloved, and it feels like they shouldn't come to me, shouldn't bother them, they should not bother me. Or we don't want to preach to them. Preaching to them is, you should do yada yada, you shouldn't do yada yada. And they're not ready to hear that. God is gentle and kind, and gentleness builds courage. We want to be gentle and kind because we want to model him. We want to point them to a God who will never, ever leave them or forsake them, who is ever present with them, who will give them the power, the love, the sound mind that they need. When we can communicate that to first in our own hearts, and then communicate that to a child, we've really helped them. So we want to ask ourselves, and perhaps the parents that we're counseling, what does anxiety look like in your home? Does it turn into explosive panic? Because sometimes the secondary emotion of fear and anxiety is anger. It becomes explosive panic, or sometimes withdrawal, quiet avoidance. Or is there peace in your home? The confidence of knowing that our God is in control. Okay, we've prepared the first P. Now we're going to listen. We must learn to listen, because children don't know the theology. They are learning line upon line, precept upon precept, but they do know that they have a stomach ache or that they have to avoid certain things. They do understand the tears that come from what they're feeling, irritability, over-preparation, maybe moving into OCD rituals. And that's what a fearful child sometimes will do to offset the negative feelings that they're feeling by their fear and anxiety. Or reassurance seeking, become needy, become clingy. So how are we going to be the parent or the counselor that draws those deep waters out of their heart? That's our job, to draw it out, to help them to understand that I understand that what is feeling scary to them. See, when I can begin to understand what they're feeling scared about, I can then ask the right questions, which is the next A I'm going to ask. But for right now, I need to listen and listen well until I can figure out what it is that really feels scary. So I'm going to be listening for that clue that they're going to give me. I'm going to listen for catastrophic thinking. What if yada yada happens? I'm going to listen for identity fear, like what if I look stupid? Or control fear, what if I can't handle it? Or abandonment fear, what if there's no one here to help me? And ultimately, we're going to let them know there is someone there to help. That might be when we could ask a question, but not tell them. Okay? We don't rush in to fix it. First, we let them know that we've heard them, that we care, that we want to help, that we will be there to help them if and when they need help. We want to help them feel safe, and that God offers safety, but we correct them after we understand that they are starting to feel safe with us because we've listened. So we've prepared our own heart, we've listened well, and now we're going to ask questions. And I love that heart question ladder that Tim introduced in the last session. Don't you? Did you like that? So how do we help the children to walk through the heart question ladder? Okay, we want to ask, what happened? We get the facts that came before the feelings. What happened right before you started feeling nervous or afraid? What was going on? So we let them talk about the circumstance. What happened? See, feelings don't come out of nowhere. Feelings follow, and we want to know what triggered that fear, and to get to what triggered it, we are moving from the fear, the caboose, back to the engine. I often use in an anxiety lesson the illustration of a train. A train sits and goes nowhere unless it has an engine. And we, as created in the image of God, are an eternal being. The inner man is eternal. God created us in his image, and that's, by the way, why we have emotions, because God has emotions. And we want to reflect his appropriate use of those emotions instead of the emotions that we end up in a sin-cursed world. But the engine moves the train. So the engine relates to the inner being, our inner man. Now, I see a bunch of bodies out here, and you all have two parts to you, and I only see one part of you. I only see the outer man. But just like your outer man has many body parts, your inner man is referred to with different parts in Scripture: the heart, the soul, the mind, the spirit, the conscience, what you treasure, the treasures of your heart. These are all different descriptions of the inner man, the inner you, that I cannot see. Only God looks on the heart. Only God looks on the heart of your child. But understand that what is going on inside of them is reflected on the outside with the behavior. So when the engine of that train decides to move, the motor is going and it is moving, guess what? It pulls the whole train, doesn't it? The box cars, tank cars, flat cars, they're different, but they all move with the engine. And then the caboose just follows. The caboose goes nowhere. When we try to live by our emotions and we're reversing God's design for our functioning, we crash, just like the caboose that would try to pull the train in its direction would crash the train. But a well-functioning train has an engine that is driving it, the train that is following the engine and accomplishing the purposes of the engine. It's taking the load to where it needs to go. It's going to the place it needs to end up. But the engine directs it, the train follows, and then the caboose is just there. I'm sure it has its purpose, just like emotions have its purpose, but it's not to direct the train, okay? So we want to help the child to have the time to really understand what's going on, to then understand, step 2, how they feel, to help them identify their feelings. Because children, by nature, don't put words on their feelings. They don't know how to name their fear, do they? So we have to help them to identify the meaning of scared or embarrassed or overwhelmed or worried or out of control. We understand as adults that naming the fear, naming the emotion, reduces the power of that emotion over us. But the child needs to start to understand what the emotion is in order to understand and articulate well what they are feeling. Okay, step 3, what did you do? Okay, so we've asked, what happened? What did you feel? What did you do? What is the reaction to the fear? Did they avoid, cry, snap at someone, which shows anger? Did they refuse to cooperate? Is it really rebellion or is it fear? Over-preparedness, which may indicate a tendency toward OCD. Ownership brings maturity. We want them to recognize the action or reaction, and that's the first step toward gaining self-control and growth. So ownership helps them to grow. It helps them to develop and mature and articulate what they really are feeling. Okay, step 4, what did you want? This is key. This is, as Tim explained, where we pivot. This is where we begin to recognize the idolatry that's going on in their heart. Now, children aren't going to understand heart idolatries, but you as the parent or the counselor will understand that this is what's driving them. Where do fights and quarrels come from among you? Do they not come from your desire within? I desire something. I have to have it in order to survive. So Anxiety then leads to a demand for certainty, control, approval, comfort, perfection. These are all idols of the heart. An idol is not something that you can see or touch. It's not made of wood or gold or silver. An idol is something that is manufactured in our heart, that drives us, that we think we have to live. And God says our heart should be bent toward him, loving him with our whole heart. And anything that is more important to us than God can become an idol of our heart. If anything is driving us more than God, our hearts are to pant after the Lord. And when they do, we're functioning according to his design for us. And when they function desiring these heart idolatries more, I have to have the approval of people. What does my behavior do? I do whatever I think will make people like me, whether it honors God or not. So an idol is actually something that you sin to get, or you sin if you don't get it. But you ask your child to try to get to what do they want. What were you hoping would happen? What were you afraid would happen? What is it that you think you have to have right now in this moment? Okay? We don't have because we don't ask God for things, or we ask it for the wrong motivation. We see children wanting certainty, wanting guarantees, and they're fearful when they don't get it. And they become angry then when they don't get it. You see, the anger then is the secondary emotion to the fear, the anxiety that they're really expressing. So, okay, the fifth step. What did you believe about God? This is where worship should become visible. Were you believing that God could help you? Or were you believing that God was distant from you, that he wouldn't help, that you were alone? Or did it feel to you like God was big enough to help you with that? See, we want to help our children to be still and know that God is there with them. Anxiety often shrinks God. He's too little to help. Okay, what did you believe about God? What did you believe about yourself? I can't do this. God won't help me. I'm not worth helping. What did you believe about your circumstances? The circumstance was too big, too powerful for God to help. Think about David and Goliath. What did the Israelite army think about Goliath? He was too big, God was too small, God wasn't going to help, and they were paralyzed by their fear. Along comes David, and he says, my God, help me to kill a lion and bear. My God will help me kill Goliath because he's defying my God. Of course my God is going to help me kill him. Never mind, Saul, I don't want that armor. It doesn't fit me. I'll take my slingshot because that's what I've used before. And this is the tool that I know God will use to help me. And you know, when we understand that God can use you, God can use me, we're just tools, aren't we? We're just instruments in the Redeemer's hands. And he can use us to make a lifelong, even eternal difference in the life of a child, because we're helping them to understand that they need to believe they've got an awesome God and that no circumstance is too big for their awesome God, and He will help them to get through that. Step 6, what happened because of it? Did avoiding make it any better? No. Did anything solve it long term? Did giving you just a reassurance, honey, it's going to be okay. Just don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. See, it doesn't solve it. I'm counseling a lady right now that checks her doorknob 40, 50 times a night to make sure that it's really locked. Does checking the door 10 times give her the confidence? No. She just goes right back and checks it again. So reassurance is not what gives us long term. I'm trying to work with her to help her see that the Lord is the God of our safety, that the Lord gives safety, the Lord gives peaceful sleep. It's going to be the Lord who gives her the rest that she needs, not her checking the door 50 times. So we want to help the child see the fruit, to see the consequences. What they didn't make it better on their own, but that seeing the fruit of the Spirit is going to make a difference. See, if you sow fear, you're going to reap chaos and panic. But if you sow trust in God, you're going to reap peace and joy. Step 7, what would trust in God look like? You're redirecting them from fear to trust in the Lord. So the child has to understand trusting God looks like functioning the way God designed them to function, in the fruit of the Spirit, with love, peace, joy. That they are trusting in the Lord with their whole heart, and He will direct their path. Ask them questions. Read these verses with them. Help them to memorize Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Help them to see that trusting God is what's going to make the difference. You can't just say no fear, okay? And you won't have a child that has no fear. Guess what? You're not an adult that has no fear. We live in a sin-cursed world. We hear the news, and we become afraid sometimes, don't we, by what we hear on the news, even the morning's news. We can be afraid. I have a husband in the air flying home from India to the U.S. who will land in the morning. Do I have a fear? Of course I have a fear. And yet, my God is bigger than my fear. My God is sovereign and in control. And when I understand that I don't have to be afraid, because my sovereign God has a plan for me. He has a plan for my husband. He has a plan for our nation. Our God is in control. And we can say, whatever happens, God's got it. And when we can convey that message to our precious little children, we're telling them, it's not that you'll never be afraid again. Of course, we're all going to have fear. But we want that fear to make us run toward God, not away from God. See, if we just let them or have empathy toward them. And by the way, empathy is a psychological term. It's really not a biblical term, is it? Compassion is the biblical term. Empathy just draws you into their fears. But compassion is what helps you to help them. Compassion is what made the Good Samaritan help that man. Okay? Compassion allows us to redirect their fear toward a God who frees the child to run toward God. And isn't that the goal here, is that we run toward God? Next steps, okay? Prepare, listen, ask, and now we are going to make application to it all. What are the next steps? We move from conversation now to formation. We've listened, we've asked directing questions, and now we kind of close the deal to change the direction of their emotion and actions toward a heart of worship. That is our goal, is bringing the child to love the Lord God with their whole heart and act out by loving their neighbor as their self. And then they are going to be running toward God with anything that disrupts that. And their fear will disrupt that. So how do we go to next steps? Clarify avoidance pattern. We're going to identify sinful patterns, not doing something that they should, or doing something that they shouldn't. We don't allow the fear to become the ruler to dictate their behavior. We're avoiding whatever they fear. Anxiety grows the fear cycle. Excuse me, fear begets fear. So we don't want to see the child enslaved, but we want to help them to control the fear. We don't want fear to dictate their decisions because it becomes their master, and it paralyzes them. But we want them to run toward God. So clarify avoidance patterns, replace the fear with trust habits. Put off panic, put on prayer and thankfulness. They're learning to pray with thanksgiving about the things that they used to be anxious about. They are learning to name their fear, to pray about it with prayer and supplication, to trust God through it, to thank God for his faithfulness, and to trust him more and more for any anxious feeling that they might have. And then step forward by faith, learning to walk by faith. Hebrews 11 is full of examples of people who walked by faith. It was hard, but they stepped out and walked by faith. So courage is not the absence of fear. It's obedience in spite of fear. Just back to the David and Goliath illustration. The Israelite army was disobedient because they were afraid. God told them to go out and win the battle with the Philistines. They didn't. David was obedient because he had faith in God. He trusted God. Okay, third, you want to establish accountability. Those daily questions, and the parents here really take the role to lead accountability. The parents lead, don't they? That's their role, where the counselors guide. So as a counselor, you guide them into an accountability pattern. The ministry leaders are reinforcing, but here the daily question is really for the parents. What felt scary today? How did you respond? You're encouraging the child to take greater risk in smaller steps. The counselor may guide them into what those steps are, but the parents are going to lead them into those daily steps. Do you see how this has to be teamwork? And you're going to help the child with a little step, like, instead of calling mom to come get you from school today because you've got a stomach ache, how about you decide to stay and go to your club after school? You stay at school all day. Or maybe the next step will be stay at school all day and go to the club afterwards. So you're helping them to make a step-by-step progress. And you celebrate their progress. And this is where the ministry leaders' reinforcement comes in. Yes, parents are supposed to be reinforcing. Counselors can reinforce, but ministry leaders see them on fewer occasions and are watching the overall progress and celebrating with them. And you're setting rhythms. In a week, we'll revisit what felt scary to you and if you've made the steps. And we'll talk about that next week in session. Okay, so you as a counselor can help them. And we want to be, in setting that rhythm, very specific, set time and goals. And then aim at worship restoration. The goal is not a fearless child. The goal is a child who runs to God when afraid. The Lord is my light, my salvation. Whom shall I fear? It's a rhetorical question. I don't need to fear anybody, anything, any circumstance, if my God is there to help me. Okay, understanding that different ages have different developmental stages. For little ones, 5 through 7, you really need to make it simple. Keep it simple. Use simple words, simple illustrations. Use pictures. God is strong. God is near. Talk in simple sentences, short sentences. Help them to understand by asking them some questions about what they understand. I smile at the illustration of the Sunday school teacher who elaborately described all these wonderful pictures about what this thing could do, and she asked the question to the children, and who do you think I'm talking about? And the kid goes, I know I'm supposed to answer Jesus, but it sure sounded like a squirrel to me. You want them to understand, and you want to ask questions to see if they really understood. And then you introduce to children 8 to 11 brief questions to help them to start to see their own heart. You're going to begin to expose heart themes. They are growing in their ability to move from the concrete that the 5-year-old, 7-year-old understood to now they're understanding concepts a little more. This is where you're doing line upon line, precept upon precept, and understanding that they can. And then the teens' identity fear is dominant. They are wondering who they are and who people around them think they are. And you want to get them to the place that they understand who God thinks they are. And that's what becomes important to them. God sees me, He knows me, He loves me, He made me, and I'm okay. It doesn't matter that I have a big nose. God still loves me. It doesn't matter that my family is poor. God still loves me. I don't have to act like I'm really a rich kid because God loves me just like I am. He put me in the family that He intended for me to be in. Okay, so fear is really a spotlight, isn't it? It shows us what feels bigger than God in a child's heart. Our job is not to remove every frightening thing from their world. Our job is to show them a God who is bigger than whatever it is that's frightening them. So we come with a plan. We prepare our own heart and our ministry to be a safe place for that fearful child. We listen to what the child feels and thinks and does. We ask these heart ladder questions, and we draw out the deep waters of their heart. And then our next steps will redirect the child from the anxious patterns of his heart to trusting God with their fears. We want to establish accountability, to direct the child to trust and worship God, a God who cares and who can. The anxiety then becomes a training ground for trust, doesn't it? It becomes the cocoon by which our child is transformed from a caterpillar to a beautiful free-flying butterfly. We are helping them to then change in the way God intended for transformation to change us. So, how can we continue to build on this and grow? Every one of these sessions are designed to help you grow in your ability to help a child who is either fearful and anxious, a child who is angry, a child who has been abused, or to help young adults in the issues that they are struggling with. So I welcome your questions. Do any of you have questions that we could talk about or illustrations that you have? When we have no questions, I either say, I've done such a great job of teaching you that you understand it thoroughly, or else I did such a bad job, I totally confused you and you don't even know what to ask. So which is it, ladies? I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear your questions. Okay, you have a question.
Nope, she was giving you a
Thumbs up. Thumbs up that you understand it.
Yes.
Good, I'm glad. Working with fearful children, I've seen it move from a kid who was so paralyzed that they had to stay glued to their mother's hip, to a child that was now back to running and playing with children and going to school or to youth group or doing things that a normal child should be doing. And it's a beautiful thing to watch, that transformation. And it really is helping them to understand their fear and to realize that fear doesn't have to control them. That is when the train is being pulled backwards by the caboose and it will crash. And when we can help them to redirect and see that their heart that is created by a loving Heavenly Father in His image, and He wants to change their heart from the effects of sin on their heart, living in a sin-cursed world. And it's not always their sin, is it? But living in a sin-cursed world can paralyze and destroy a precious little child to where they don't know how to function. So by God's grace, we can help them to grow in their ability to trust God with their whole heart, to be free from the paralyzing fear, and to get on with being a child, just growing and playing and learning and loving. And it's so fun to watch when that happens. When it doesn't happen, they grow into a anxious, fearful, panicked adult. And I see that. The lady that I just started working with OCD, she's been to counselors and counselors and counselors in the past. And I asked the question, tell me about your childhood. Were you anxious? Were you fearful? Did you struggle with OCD in the past? And absolutely she did. The things that she could tell me that triggered her anxiety, her fear as a child. She never learned how to deal with that as a child. She has a son that she is making him go around to check doors with her. I said, are you teaching him to be OCD? She said, I hope not, but she is. She learned to be OCD from an OCD mother. And now she is transmitting that to her son. And I said, we've got to work on this. I've got to help you so you can help him. This is not okay to stay in these patterns and behaviors. So in OCD, obsessive thoughts that are just bombarding, and that's from fear. I'm afraid if I don't check them. And I said, afraid of what? What are you afraid will happen if the door's not locked at night? Well, somebody could get it. What would happen if they might hurt me. Well, what if they might kill me. Well, what if somebody kills you? I'd be dead. What happens if you're dead? Oh, I'd be with Jesus. Oh, that's not so bad, is it? Oh, do you see how questioning can lead them to a different mindset? Be transformed, be changed by the renewing of your mind. And I'm hoping enough questions with this lady will help her to see that the bombarding thoughts that she has are lies from the enemy that she doesn't have to believe. And the C, compulsion. O is the obsessive thought, C is the compulsion, what they think they have to do to satisfy this. So what she has to do is keep checking it. And she said, it's not just the doors, it's other things. I'm afraid to hear what those other things might be, but we're going to get into that and help her to see that she doesn't have to check all those things every night. There is a rational safety check. I do check my doors at night. I walk to the back door, the front door, especially when my husband is not home and he's in India teaching right now. So, and we've got workers working in our house, building out in our basement. We're making an in-law apartment in our basement, and I'm very excited about that. My husband and I will move down there into a new in-law apartment, and then the upstairs will be for our daughter and her family upstairs. So right now I have construction workers coming right and left. They know where a hidden key is outside. They come in before I'm up in the morning, and they're doing things even while we're away. But I do check to see that when they left the lights off and the doors locked and all is well down there. So I do appreciate safety, but I don't run around 50 times checking doors because maybe, possibly, I might have left something open. And a mother like that will convey that. You know, I look back to my fear of spiders, and my mom never said to me, "I'm afraid of spiders." But I know she was. And I can remember some of her spider stories that I could tell you those spider stories almost verbatim right now that triggered my fear of spiders as a very young child. When I was first married, my husband thought it was the funniest thing when I would go ballistic because there was a little spider on the ceiling that I'd spotted, and I wanted him to go up and kill it. And he would say, "That's ridiculous." And in my heart, it was, if you really loved me, you would kill that spider because it's going to hurt me. And he didn't kill it. And I had to worry about it. I was subbing as a teacher at the Christian school where my kids went. And the teacher that I was subbing for while she was going to be out long-term for surgery had chosen for her reading that we would read Charlotte's Web. I had never read Charlotte's Web to my children. Why would I read a story about a spider? I'd never read it. And here I was assigned by the supervisor teacher, it was her classroom, that I would read a chapter after recess every day to her third graders. And before the end of that book, I'd fallen in love with Charlotte. And just a renewed mind that spiders were not our enemies. Spiders were actually our friends, and spiders did good things, and I'd heard that before, but it just kind of went because spider was my enemy, and it didn't matter that they ate good bugs. They were my enemy. But as I read that book and fell in love with Charlotte, I started to see every spider as maybe that's one of Charlotte's babies. And it honestly, truly changed the way I thought about spiders. And I really don't try to kill every spider anymore because I would not want to kill Charlotte's babies. And besides, that spider is eating the bad bugs. And okay, I'll live with spiders. And by the way, I read that whether you know it or not, or like it or not, that you're always sitting within 6 feet of a spider. So I finally said, okay, Lord, you created spiders for a reason. I will make peace with spiders. See, but a child has to go through that same process, doesn't he? Making peace with whatever it is that they were so afraid of. Okay, question.
Yes, how do we teach our kids to be safe without introducing that fear or anxiety and just safety in, let's say, stranger danger?
Okay, that's an excellent question. How do we teach our children safety without increasing their fear, as in stranger danger? Okay, and we have to do that sometimes in counseling or as parents, because you do want your children to be aware of stranger danger, okay? And there is a certain amount of fear that is appropriate. I am afraid to walk on the edge of a cliff. Why? Because I might fall off, okay? I am afraid of a rabid bat or a rabid dog. Why? Because rabies could kill me. Okay, I won't pick up a snake. So danger that is that helps us to be safe is appropriate. Okay, I mean, it's appropriate to recognize the danger and to be afraid of the danger. That's appropriate. So that's an appropriate fear that we want to teach our children, but help them to understand, okay, they do not have to be afraid of all people, because all people are not strangers. And quite frankly, when we're dealing with sexual abuse and grooming is not done by strangers. Grooming is done by somebody within the very close circle of trusted people. Okay, so we want to educate our children to the possibility of danger without making them afraid. So just as we would teach them, okay, we're hiking and there's a cliff. Safety says, don't walk on the edge of the cliff, or if you fall over, you could be killed. Okay, so with a person who is asking you to do something that you know dishonors God or dishonors your parents, is disobedient to God, disobedient to your parents, you don't do it. You come to your parent and you let us know what just happened. You tell us, and we will help you with that. We will keep you safe. But you teach them that God keeps them safe too. God can help. I can think of some illustrations in my life where I know God protected me from either people or circumstances, and kept me safe from a worst case scenario. And you help them to understand that God put you as parent there to help them, that you are the person who will help them to understand and navigate stranger danger, that they don't open the door for a stranger. They don't, as teens, get on a chat line with somebody, even if they say they're another teen. They don't get on a chat line with them, especially when the conversation starts to move into a sexual direction. But they just don't chat with strangers. I know certain games, they are playing games with people that they don't know, but no personal information should ever be exchanged in those kinds of games. And you warn kids against that. You don't ever give them your, quote, real name. You don't give them where you live or any information about you. You're just gamer 1 or gamer 2. Okay? Thank you, Tim.
All right. I need the microphone from you. So. All right, does that sound okay? We good?
All right, we're going to stop for lunch in about 30 minutes. So I just got a call from Papa John saying, our pizza's on the way. So I'm not going to go too long, but those of you join us online, sorry you don't get to eat lunch with us. But you can have pizza on your own and order from Papa John's. I highly recommend it. But hey, it is good. It is good for us, those of you who are here with us in person and those who are online. I know we got a group over in the young adult track as well who are looking at some issues there. And so last session, we just wanted to kind of give you an understanding of how do we walk with kids who are anxious. And you will experience kids who are anxious right away when you're caring for kids, right? And frankly, anybody you care for, right? There's no age that's immune. If you care for an 80-year-old, you care for an 18-year-old, you care for an 8-year-old, you're going to experience anxiety. All of us experience anxiety and fear and worry, and it's one of Jesus' most often questions that he asked to his children. Why are you afraid? But it isn't a condemnation. It's an invitation to come and to trust him, to walk with him, to be close. But we're going to look at anger, and I often make this statement, is anger is a window into the heart of a young person. So anger is this window, it's this magnifying glass on what the heart loves and what it values. And so if you want to find out what a child truly loves, then you're going to find that they're going to protect, they're going to get angry about the things that they love. And anger is not inherently sinful. It's a God-given emotion with a purpose. And so in your notes, you're going to see this statement: anger is a spotlight. It shows us what the child loves, fears, or demands most in that moment. I want you to think about two 12-year-old boys. Let's call them Caleb and Jonah. They have sibling rivalry. They're twins, right? And the parents come and they notice this, and they're like, Caleb and Jonah constantly are in competition. They argue over who gets to sit in the front, who got to the car first. They accuse each other of cheating in games. They refuse to share. Small conflicts turn into shoving matches and shouting. The parents are like, we had to put them in separate bedrooms because we can't keep them in the same bedroom peacefully, all right? So now we're in separate rooms. Everything's a competition. The parents would tell you they fight over fairness constantly. Both boys privately say, he gets the better deal. Mom likes him more. He thinks he's better than me. Here they are, 12-year-old boys from their own perspective, kind of stuck in their own corners, right? And surprisingly, unsurprisingly, pretty angry all the time. And so now we're in the plan model, right? We're asking the question, how can we have a productive conversation with parents? How can we have a productive conversations with kids? How can we have productive conversations with people who are involved, right? You might be their teacher. You might be their friend. You might be their parent. But what do we need to do? Well, ultimately, we need to prepare. We need to listen. We need to ask. We need to develop some next steps. Well, how might we prepare? Well, the parents might pray for impartiality, refuse to side to emotions, and decide we're not just refereeing, we're discipling hearts. Now, conflict between two 12-year-old boys over who gets to play video games first feels kind of annoying as a parent, right? I had two kids pretty close in age, right? And there's this challenge of who gets to do what first, but it's also an opportunity. It's not just annoying. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to shepherd their hearts. It's an opportunity for them to experience a new perspective on their anger, right? And so if parents are reactive, the twins will escalate. But ultimately, what I hope to see is that they need to prepare. So anger grows when desires become demands. Common ruling desires include fairness or control or winning, respect, attention, or being first, not being embarrassed or feeling powerless. And again, all of these things I think you'll see are good things. But they're good things that become controlling things, become demanding things. They become desires that are too deep and too entrenched in a child's heart. And so how do we understand, how do we use kind of a plan framework? So we recognize this. Anger is not always sin, but God is angry at injustice. Jesus was angry at the hardness of heart, Mark 3:5. The issue is what is ruling the anger. Well, biblical perspective from James 4:1 is what causes quarrels and fights among you. Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? So what's the challenge with a child who's angry? It's to help them to know their own heart. What's a child with an adult that's angry? Help them to understand their own heart, to understand what they love, what they value. And so we're going to prepare. Now, you think about how we might prepare ourselves if we're a parent or if we're a youth worker or teacher who's frustrated. Before correcting anger, perhaps we're going to check our own heart. Are you embarrassed or offended? All right, it can be embarrassing if your 12-year-olds are acting out in public. Right? It'd be embarrassing if you're, teenagers or any age or even young adults are acting out. But it can be embarrassing. You can be offended. We can be reacting from pride. How dare you throw the controller at the wall? How dare you waste our money? How dare you disrespect your mother or father like that? How dare you? And so we need to check our own heart. Are we ultimately taking on a heart of compassion? Or are we offended? Are we reacting from pride? We need to regulate, again, self-controlled expressions of anger, self-controlled dealing with anger. Again, regulate is simply self-controlled emotions. You cannot shepherd a child's anger if your own is unexamined. Proverbs remind us that anger spreads in a household. Associate with an angry man and you become like him. Right? Now, how hard is that for parents and kids who experience that often from each other in their own home? Right? That transfers. So you have an angry dad? Well, you often have an angry son. You got angry parents who are angry at one another who are modeling that. Well, oftentimes it contributes to what you experience with the child. And so learning how to regulate and self-control your own anger. You cannot shepherd a child's anger if your own is unexamined. Choosing the right environment. Avoid correcting in public in chaos or when exhausted. Now, what's the key verse there that I often have to remind parents of? The anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. When you correct in anger, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It does not produce righteousness. Now, here's the tricky part about that. The tricky part about it is that when you correct in anger, sometimes you get results. Sometimes you get change. Sometimes you can convince a kid to shut up by shouting, "Shut up." But ultimately, you don't change the heart. So the goal is, if the goal is simply to get a kid to be quiet, you might outshout them. But ultimately, what does James remind us? That the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. That anger doesn't actually accomplish the work that we're trying to accomplish of reaching the heart of the child. And so, before correcting in anger, we have to prepare ourselves. We have to prepare our own heart. We have to go to God. We have got to ask the question, is this truly important? How many preference issues do we get angry about that don't need to be addressed, that would be better overlooked because we simply want our way as parents? And sometimes our anger reveals our own selfishness. And God calls us to care for children and to demonstrate what is truly important. So the L, what is it? It's listen here. But most adults correct before understanding. And we need to choose to listen first. So let's go back to the 12-year-old boys. 12-year-old boys are fighting all the time. The parents are like, can you talk with them? You know what? One of them gave a bloody nose to his brother this week. We can't have this continuing, right? They're kicked out of the kids program at church because they keep fighting with one another. It's embarrassing, right? We're not even going to bring them to youth group anymore because they were told they had to sit in the hallway. And parents are beside themselves. Now, we might meet with each boy separately first. What's a question we might ask? Tell me the hardest thing about being a twin or being a brother. What's some of the common responses? Well, he's better at sports or games than me. Everyone compares us. He always wins. Mom likes him better. It's not fair. So what are you hearing a lot of there? Hearing a lot of comparison and envy language, right? What's going on inside their heart? I'm not as good. I'm different, right? I don't like who I am. So instead of, why are you acting like this? Start with, help me understand what just happened. Help me understand what happened with the fight where you guys gave bruises to each other. Your brother has a black eye and you had a bloody nose. Where your mom is crying, right? Your dad is angry. The whole family's out of sorts, right? And now you're at risk of being kicked out of youth group. And what are we listening for? We're listening for what felt unfair, what felt disrespected or threatened. Anger often masks, and it masks fear, embarrassment, loneliness, or hurt. And so, again, I think one of the challenges with anger is like you can run right to the behavior. You punched your brother, he punched you back. You have this conflict, and we can run right to how do you get along better with your brother? But we miss the whole heart of envy. We miss the whole challenge, the whole battle that's going on inside the heart when somebody's angry, right? And so what's really behind the punch? What motivated that? And so I think that's the challenge as we ask good questions and we listen, right? What's the hardest thing about being a twin? Right? It's a good question. And so you might move from there to the ladder, right? And we're going to ask kind of heart questions. So let's walk through that one conflict. Here they are. They're playing basketball in the driveway. Caleb accuses Jonah of cheating. Jonah shoves him. Caleb throws the ball. They yell at one another. Fist comes, right? Wrestling on the ground. It's a common 12-year-old boy scenario. They could be fighting and then they could be laughing 10 minutes later. It's the way 12-year-old boys tend to react and respond to their emotions. But the reality is that here in this situation, right, we're talking about conflict that's overspilling into youth group, right? Now they're being threatened with saying, okay, you can't come here anymore if you keep fighting. And parents are saying, okay, like, what do we do about this? Well, what happened? You know, he didn't call it out, right? He cheated. He shoved me. All right, those are the facts. Staying on the facts. Starting there, slow it down, clarify before correction, understanding, right? Well, he threw the ball at me. Well, what happened before that? Well, I called him a stupid idiot. Okay. What happened before that? Well, he made up a stupid rule that said he could have a 9-pointer, right? If he made it from beyond the free throw line, it was a 9-pointer, and I was winning 8-0. And then he said he won because he got a 9-pointer and it's 9-8. Well, you can't make up a rule. You can't make up a 9-point rule. Well, why not, right? It's a 9-pointer. Well, okay, understand how each of them are their perspectives. Well, that does feel kind of fair if you're winning 8-0 and your brother makes up a 9-point rule and makes a basket and declares himself the winner. That feels a bit absurd, right? It doesn't feel fair. But here they are, right? In their own way, going back and forth. So what happened? Slowing it down. Clarity before correction. Well, what'd you feel? Mad, right? Disrespected, embarrassed, right? Like he thinks he's better, like he always has to win, so he has to create a rule so he can cheat, right? And mom doesn't even care. Mom thought it was funny that he made a 9-pointer. She didn't even, right? She didn't help. But now, okay, we're seeing a deeper emotion. Well, what did you do? Well, I shoved him. I threw the ball. I said he's stupid. Well, behavior, again, it flows from belief, right? Naming the choice, building ownership. Now, it's interesting. Kids will tell the story what he did. They won't tell the story what I did. And one of the things that I do when I'm counseling kids, particularly with anger, is I help them to try to learn to refocus on, okay, so I know you just told me what your mom did. Now I want you to tell me what you did. I know you just told me what your brother did. Now I want you to tell the story again with things that you did, actions you took, ways that you contributed to the situation. Because our emotions tend to be about what the other person did when they're angry. Right? Now, it's the same for adults, right? My husband, my wife, right? People come into marriage counseling, they try hard to prove to me that they're the good ones. I'm the one who really tries. I'm the one who's doing it right. I'm the one who's, got the reason to be hurt here. But behavior flows from belief. Now, what did we want? Well, I wanted to win. I wanted to be fair. I wanted him to admit that it was cheating, right? I wanted Dad to see that I'm better, right? Again, what were you hoping would happen? I wish we could just play and we didn't have to be in competition and fight all the time. It's not fun anymore, right? What did you believe? Well, he always gets away with stuff. I have to prove myself. If I don't win, I'm nothing. No one notices me. Now the rivalry shows there's identity insecurity and comparison. What were you believing about God? Well, I wasn't even thinking about him. Right? Typically, you'd get an answer from a 12-year-old boy. I wasn't thinking anything. Right? But are they secure in who God made them to be, no matter whether they win or lose? Is it okay? Is it okay that their brother got an advantage they didn't get? Is it okay if life is unfair? Who else experienced that kind of unfairness? So, next, that's what happened because of it. Well, we both got grounded. Now we can't play basketball. Mom was crying. We don't even want to be around each other. We can't go to youth group anymore. They say that we fight too much. So the reality is that anger kind of promised and tried to protect victory, right? Their anger tried to get them what they want. But the reality is their anger underdelivered. Their anger actually led to further isolation, further hurt, further conflict. So what happened because of it? Did it bring peace? Let them see the fruit. How did that work? What would have been a better way to handle it? What if you had chosen self-control? What if you had chosen to let your brother be unfair and be okay with it? What would trusting God look like? This is where you shepherd, right? If God had made you different on purpose, what would trusting him look like? Well, I could just play without trying to prove I'm the best. I could just let it go. I could congratulate him on making a 9-pointer. Right? I could laugh about it and know that I really won 8-1. Okay? I don't have to win that argument. Maybe next time I make a 9-pointer instead, right? And so then I'll be up 72 to nothing because I had 8 9-pointers, right? I can walk away instead of shoving. What does trust look like? It looks like contentment. I can just go out and enjoy a game. I can have humility. I can have self-control. I can release comparing myself to my brother. I can just be secure in who I am. I don't have to be better than him. I don't have to be the most liked. So the fight really isn't about basketball. What was it about? It was about who matters more, who's better, who gets the glory. So when our identity is threatened, anger becomes the protection. Now, think about Proverbs 13:10. By pride comes nothing but strife. So ultimately, what caused the conflict? Pride. I'm better. I don't deserve to be treated this way. You can't make up a rule, right? And so James 4, you desire and you do not have, so what? So you fight. What is it that you were desiring, right? And so what would trusting God look like, right? Correction becomes this invitation to speak into the issues that are going on. And so, again, here we have 12-year-old boys who are ready to be kicked out of youth group. They're driving their mother crazy, embarrassing their parents because they got a black eye and a bloody nose. The neighbors don't like their kids to play with these kids because all they hear is conflict. It's starting to result in isolation, right? And they're wondering, okay, like, does it have to continue like this? What is this going to look like if this continues till they're 18? And parents are scared and they're worried. Now we have an opportunity to enter into a conflict. So conflict becomes opportunity for correction. Now, we can just get frustrated by the conflict. But ultimately, God calls us to have a plan, right? To have a plan to help walk alongside people. So what's the next steps? Well, we're going to clarify what must stop. Be specific. No hitting, name-calling, throwing, or screaming at authority. Parents must eliminate, why can't you be like your brother? Public scorekeeping, performance-based praise that fuels competition, right? That's some of the things that parents might work on. So remember, we talked about dual track, right? The parents have the problem and the kids have the problem. Might it be that parents have favored the child who's easier to get along with? Happens all the time, right? And they feel like, well, I'm just correcting one child and I am praising another because one does things that are praiseworthy and one just does things that drive me nuts. And so, again, as we look towards helping both boys, we're going to be working with the parents. What are the ways they might be contributing? Clarify what must stop, both in the child and the parent. Replace with godly habits, teach and practice, just having them to stop. Take a breath. Pray. God, help me. Speak with respect. Establishing accountability, a daily check-in. What frustrated you today? How did you respond? So giving each boy kind of individual time with the parent, individual strengths that are affirmed, and roles that don't overlap. Even twins recognizing, like, twins need the opportunity to be different. Some parents want identical twins to be alike in every way. But they need the opportunity to be different, to pursue different tasks. And so we're going to parent them in ways that allow them to thrive in their individual way that God made them to be. So doing a daily check-in, what frustrated you today? How did you respond? You might even practice conflict scripts where you role play. I disagree. That felt unfair. Let's replay it. I'm going to walk away and take a break now. You think about how transforming it could be for 12-year-old boys if they actually got those 4 phrases down. I disagree, but I can disagree respectfully. That felt unfair. Having them have a conversation about that, I'm sure the boy who came up with the 9-point rule thought that was pretty unfair. But it was the only way that he could win, right? And so he came up with that rule, but how do we help him to see, okay, that will not do good things for unity in your relationships. We're training skill and heart, okay? Enforcing unity consequences. If one explodes, both lose privileges. If both escalate, you teach, you sink or swim together, right? And so there's times where you got to treat them as individuals, but there's times where you might have to treat them as a pair. We're going to praise peacemaking aggressively. When one backs down, you choose humility. You honored God now. That was a really mature response, son. Right? That was a really mature response in how you handled that. Right? Praising them, letting them know that the behaviors that you want repeated. Rewarding that. Seeing that. You know, we want to coach parents. If you only punish fighting or anger, they will fight smarter. They're just going to figure out ways to do it where you don't see it, right? If you shepherd envy and pride, you will shape the brothers for life. So ultimately, what's going on in these brothers? There's a lot of envy, a lot of insecurity, a lot of pride. And if you can get them to a point where they can trust one another, be on the same team, well, they can have a real asset for life. They can have a brother that's close for life. Twins often carrying this rivalry into adulthood if not dressed intentionally. So, again, we're going to think through some of the next steps. Establish accountability, set a review rhythm, schedule follow-up. Asking a question, what did you do to be kind to your brother today? What did you do to support your brother today? Well, that's a good question, right? Because it orients the heart towards grace. It orients the heart towards kindness. So it's like out of the conflict of the moment, what did you do to support your brother? Well, if you have a heart for your brother in the moments that aren't conflict, right, it more likely spills over into the moments that are conflict. Like if you're intentionally choosing kindness at other moments, then when the conflict comes about, right, there's opportunities to choose kindness and self-controlled responses to frustrations at other times. Ultimately, we aim at worship restoration. The goal is not a quieter house. It's a child who trusts God when frustrated. So, think about the different ages and stages, right? 5 to 7, keep things simple. Use visual charts. Teach angry body signals, right? Ages 8 to 11, we're going to talk more about the desire patterns and introduce heart language. Teenagers, identity and respect issues begin to dominate, exploring pride and reputation themes. But anger is not just noise to silence. It's a window into worship. Ultimately, what do we want kids to see? We want kids to see that God can provide for their needs. That what the desire that you wanted, ultimately you can have in God. And that whatever your brother can't give you, you can trust God with that. If we treat anger as an opportunity instead of an interruption, we can choose to disciple the heart. So, anger is an opportunity for kids to grow. Parents get frustrated with it. Youth workers get frustrated with it. Teachers get frustrated with it. In counseling, you often have an opportunity to unpack anger. Because anger is often the situations that leads people to the crisis point that brings them into counseling. And, but if you'll patiently draw that out, what's the heart behind it? What does it want? Then ultimately, how can we help individuals find their hope and peace in Christ? That can make a major difference in how they respond. We are going to head for lunch. We're about 20 minutes late, but lunch got here. So, we're going to head to lunch till 12:50, okay? And that's going to be over in the gym. And I think there's going to be food in the kitchen that you can grab. And then we're going to try to be back here at 12:50 and begin session 3. Does that work? If you're online, you got about a half hour for lunch. Thanks.